Hey guys, I'm Avish. This is the 25th video of .NET MAUI with Syncfusion control series. Let's quickly review our previous session before we get started. In the previous session, we learned about the data visualization controls available in Syncfusion MAUI control series. We discussed Cartesian chart control and explored different type of creating Cartesians such as column, multi-column, bar, spline, bubble, step line, range, stacked column, scattered, range bar and other charts. We did explore the selection and trackball options in the Cartesian charts control. Please review the previous session before proceeding. In this session, we will explore circular charts, which is the second control of the data visualization series. We will understand the advanced features and customization of circular chart control. Circular charts are also known as radial charts or circular graphs, represent data in a circular format. Some of the common type of circular charts include pie charts, which are the most well-known circular charts. They divide a circle into slices to represent the proportions of a whole. Each slice represents a category and the size of the slice corresponds to the proportion of the whole. Similar to pie charts, donut charts have a hole in the center. They are useful for displaying multiple sets of data and making comparisons. Instead of using slices, radial bar charts uses bars that radiate from the center of the circle. Each bar represents a category and the length corresponds to the value. Radar charts are also known as spider charts or web charts, and these display multivariate data in the form of a two-dimensional chart. Multiple axes are used to represent different variables and the data is plotted on the axis. Syncfusion circular charts provide a wide range of features available to customize the appearance of charts and render the needed outputs. Responsiveness is another key feature where the charts render adaptively based on the device type like phones, tablets, and device orientation to provide an optimal user experience. Syncfusion circular charts can be exported to image formats like JPEG and PNG. Let's now switch to the coding session and get going. Before starting our coding, ensure that you right click on this project, click on Manage NuGet Packages to bring up this window on the right side and ensure that syncfusion.maui.charts package is already installed. As I said, I've been using 23.1.36 version. We'll upgrade it soon, but right now please ensure that you have this package installed. Once the package is installed, we'll be following the MVVM pattern, and under the view folder, right click on the view, add new item and choose .NET MAUI, select content page.xaml, and instead of new page.xaml, let me rename it as circularcharts.xaml file. Let me select add, and you see that there is a template code which is being created by the Visual Studio. Our next step is to create a view model file. Right click on the view model, add new item, select the class file, and instead of class1.cs, I'm going to rename it as circularcharts_viewModel.cs file. Once this is created, let me change this from internal to public class, and then we will add a constructor. Once the constructor is created, similar to the previous session, we will be creating an observable collection to bind the data to the charts control. So let me create an observable collection reusing our data visualization model that we have created in our previous session and name this as a circular charts data. Let me mouse over on this and choose show potential fixes to auto populate the using statement. Let me do that to the observable collection as well. Mouse over and say potential fixes and choose object model. Once this is done, we need to create a method to create the temporary data. As I said earlier, we are not using any API, we are just using the static data to bind the charts. We will be using the APIs in the next set of sessions that we are going to continue. Now, right now, let me create a private method and call it as generate source. Let me close this class as well, and let me initiate the circular charts data as circular charts data equal to new observable collection data model. Now within this, we are going to declare the collections. So let me add the data within this circular data, which is a temporary one. So I will add new data visualization model, food, health, defense, development, and others as some values. Now we'll be using this as a country's revenue model or an yearly spends for a country revenue data. Let me close this. Let's also create another collection to distinguish the charts with different colors. And I'm going to name it as a brush collection, similar to what we have done in our previous session. And we are going to assign some brush colors to this chart colors. How do we do that? We will type in as chart colors equal to new observable collection, and within the observable collection we're going to create some temporary data of chart colors which will be of solid brush color. So let me randomly create some solid color brushes and close this as well. Now with this, the circular charts view model is complete for now. Depending on the requirements, we are going to enhance this circular charts view model as well. For now, we are good to go with the XAML file and do the necessary changes to bind the circular charts view model file that we have just created. Let me switch to the circular charts.xaml file. Let's create our first circular charts. Let me change this title, give a space here, and then let me bind the view model by using binding XML namespace binding as the view model. Once this is done, let me change this vertical stack layout. Let me remove this vertical stack layout completely and add the scroll view, as we are going to create multiple circular charts one after the other. Within the scroll view, let me fill the properties of the scroll view, which is our height request and the visibility. After the visibility options are defined for the scroll view, let me create a stack layout here, and within the stack layout we need to bind the view model. We would say stack layout dot binding context, so that the view model is applied to the entire stack layout. We would say binding colon circular charts view model. Notice that we already have a prompt here from the Visual Studio to select the multiple options. Let's choose the first option and close this one. Once this is completed, we need to create a circular chart. After this binding context, I'm going to drag and drop the circular chart from the Syncfusion MAUI toolbox. We have the SF circular chart here. Let me drag and drop the circular chart. Now we have a title as demo. So we will define the title as a label rather than the title property. So let me remove this. And then within this, I will also add the binding context here. Let's say charts colon SF circular chart dot binding context. And let's define the binding context as similar to the one which we have defined in the top, which is nothing but our circular charts view model. Now to keep it simple, let me rename it as chat instead of charts, because I can copy few lines of code from my other window where I have defined it as chat. Once this is done, we need to create a chat label since we have removed the label here. Before that, let me create few properties for this SF circular chart, such as name, margin, height request and other options. So I'm going to define the name as circular chart with height request, margin options and the width request. Once this is done, let's create a title for this. We are going to bind the data of the budget expenses of a country. So let's give the title as budget expenses. Before that, we need to create SF chat dot title as the property, and within that we are going to create a label which showcases the different options or the title, margin and other options. Once this is done, we have the legend, and then we need to expand this pie series. Instead of just wrapping the pie series, I'm going to add chat colon SF circular chat dot series. Within the series, I'm going to define chat colon pie series. We have different series over here. We are going to choose pie series, and we are going to give few options for this pie series or the properties. The properties are name, animation and other stuff. So let me add name and enable animation to true. After this, let me bind the item source, which is nothing but our binding context and the chat circular data which we have created in the view model. This is the chat circular data, circular chats data. We are going to bind it as the item source. Then I'm going to bind the palette brushes as our chat colors. Once this is done, we will add another set of properties which are binding path and binding value for the access. And our binding path will be the name, and X binding path will be the name, and the Y binding path will be the value which we have defined. So this is the X and Y which is done. And once this is done, let's start the application and see the output. Notice that we still have the Cartesian charts as our output. Let me stop this application and switch to the Solution Explorer and choose the appshell.xaml. Let me copy and paste this flyout item and name this as circular charts. Title remains the same, And we are going to change the route to circular charts as well as the content template. Once this is done, let's restart the application and notice the output. Notice that the output is empty except the title. That means we have done a couple of mistakes in the code. Let me switch back to the XAML and see the bindings are correct. Binding is right with the item source. Palette brushes are fine. We have imported the binding as well from view model, and we're also binding the circular charts view model here. Let me switch back to the circular charts view model. We have the circular chart data and the chart color data, which is having some data values. Why is it not working? I think I got the issue here. The problem is, look at that, the generate source that we created, the private method, is gray out. When it is gray out, it means that it is unused. That means I have created the method, but I'm not invoking that method in the constructor. Let me copy this. Not sure how I have done this mistake, but it is good. So let me copy and paste it here and restart the application. Look at that. We now have the data, but it is in the form of numbers. We just need to define it's going to be either the percentage or the value in $1 billion or something like that. Let's choose the percentage. Let me switch back to the XAML file and extend this pie series with the data label settings. In order to do that, we need to create chat.pie series. Since we are dealing with the pie series, and we would say data label series settings. And within that, we need to add the chat circular data label settings, and we need to define the label placement as outer. I'm going to put it as an outer for the clear distinction. And then after that, let's create the label style as well. Circular data label settings dot, you have an option called label style, and you have many options. I'll leave it to you guys to explore them. And then we have chat data label style, and I can create a label format. Let me create the label format as pound, and then I'm going to bind it as percentage. Let me close this to solve this error. Once this is done, let me restart the output and show you the difference. Notice that we have the legends and we have the percentage shown as an output outside the placement, which means we have the pie chart and then the data corresponding to the pie chart is shown outside, which is good. Let's now focus on a 180 degrees pie chart. Let me switch back to the code and do the necessary changes. Now that we understood the pie chart, let me create a semi pie chart. So how do we do that? Let me create a line separator right after this chart. Let me copy that code from my other window. We have already created a line separator in the data visualization. Please refer to that session. Now right after this box view, I'm going to copy this SF circular chart and paste it and do some small modification. Call this as semi pie chart. And the only change that we need to do in the semi pie chart is the start angle of the pie chart. So let's say that start angle is starting from 180 degrees. The entire angle will be complete 360, but it will be split into half with a start angle as 180. So let me run this application and show you the output. We have few errors since we have copied the changes. So instead of pie series, let me call it as semi pie series. Let's see the other errors and solve them as well. I think that's all. Let me run this application and notice the output. Look at that. We have a pie chart and a semi pie chart. That's simple. It is. Let me change this from circular to semi pie. Let me go to the title and say semi pie chart. And the first one will be a circular chart, of course, but the title should say pie chart. That's all. Let me restart the application again and notice the output. Look at that. We have a pie. We have a semi pie chart. Let's now focus on creating a donut chart. Let me collapse this chart as well as the box view. Copy the box view, place it right after our semi pie chart. Copy the semi pie chart as well, paste it. Let's do the necessary changes and change this from semi pie chart to the donut chart. Once this is done, we will change it as donut over here in the title as well. Let me change it as donut, and instead of pie series, we are going to bind this as donut series. So let's say donut series, and we need to change the data label settings as well to donut series. That's all it is. Let's run this application and notice the output. Alright, we need to do some changes here, and this will be called as series. Let me name it as just series. Let's see if there are any other errors with X names. X names need to be unique, and hence we are getting those errors. So let me run this application. Notice the output. All errors are resolved. Let's notice the output now. We have the pie, we have the semi pie, and then we have the donut chart. Of course, we have an issue here. Since we copied it from SemiPy, we are having the start angle as 180 in the and showing it as a semi donut. For now, let's remove this 180 degrees as the start angle and we'll show the complete donut chart. The only difference between pie and donut is we will have a circle in the middle with a white space and shows as a donut. But what we can do is we can have an interactive donut. Whenever we select on the particular donut pie, we can show it as a selector. Let me show you how to achieve that. Let me switch back to the XAML file and start adding few customization to this donut. So we can add the donut customization as chat donut series dot center view. Within the center view, I will add a stack layout, and I would say this, I will give some height and width request within that center view to show the name and label that we have selected. So let me create a label for the selected donut piece, and then we will show the value as well within the middle. So once we do that, on selection, we need to refresh the binded data. So we have a event called explode index, which is equal to, we can bind it as a selected index. So I will do binding as selected index. So we'll define this property called selected index in the view model. Notice that it is showing a warning stating that the member is not found in the view model. So let me switch back to this view model and then create the selected index as the first one. So I'm going to create a property called selected index, and within the selected index, I'm going to assign the selected donut value. So I would say property, a public property, integer, and name this as selected index. Now the error should go away since we have defined the selected index. Let me stop this application and restart it again. Notice that we have an error stating that the object not be referenced. So let me switch back and see. We have created the labels to refer to a donut view model, which is nothing but our binding context. So let me go back to the binding context and add a name to this. Name is nothing but our donut view model. Hence we are cross-referencing it with the name and value. We have the name and value which we are binding, which is nothing but the selected value of the donut. Let me stop this application and enhance this view model with the name and values. So I'm going to add a couple of more properties. Before adding those properties, whenever we choose a donut, it should highlight the donut of the selected value. So we need to enhance this model by leveraging on notifying the changes. So let's say notify property changed event. Let's inherit that and let me add the potential fixes to implement the interface. So we now have an event implemented here. So let me also add another public property on property changed event for this, which will invoke the property changed for the given value. So whenever there is a selected index is changed, we're going to get and set that selected index. So let me do the return selected index, which will be the private property. And when we are setting the selected index, we need to define the selected index as well right after this. So within the set property, also wrap this return statement. And within the set property, what we need to do is we need to reassign the selected index value of that pie chart. And once this is done, we have to notify that selected index is changed for the selected value. Let me correct this error, and right after this, I'm going to create name and value property as well. So right after this, before the selected index, I'll create a name and I'll also create a value property for the selected value. So let me define the value as well and a private property for the name, which is missing here. That's it. Now let me switch back to the application and notice that the error will go away right now. After this, we can run this application, and whenever the selected index is changed, we have to re-notify the data view model. I'll show you how to do that in a moment. For now, let me run the application and see the output. Notice that we have the donut and this first index is selected. However, the selected index value is not being populated into the middle of this donut, which is nothing but our center of the series, which we have created as center view. Now the label and value need to be assigned. Right now they are empty. Now if I switch to the view model, we have just defined them and named them as empty. So whenever a selected index is changed, which means whenever I click on a specific piece of the donut, it should highlight the selected value and the name. In order to do that, we will create a private method called private void, and I'll call this method as notify index. This method will notify the selected index value. Let me add the input as value. We are going to invoke this notify index on a selected index changed. So wherever we have selected index changed, we have to invoke this event called notify index, and we will pass the value of the selected index. That's all. Now once this is done within the notify index, what I'm going to do is, if the value is greater than 0, I'm going to assign that value from the circular charts data, which is our model. So I would say I will declare a variable called model using the selected index. I'm going to fetch that value. Let's say if we are selecting the first index value, let me go back to the charts view model and say we are selecting the health, which is the index 1. We are going to populate the name as health and value as 21.5, which is nothing but this model. So what we are going to do is, we're going to populate name equal to model.name. Now let's say value equal to, since we have a double, let me parse it to integer and we would say model.value. Let's now notice the output. We have a Doughnut chart, but it's not selectable still. So let me switch back to the code and see what is the mistake we are doing here. We have the explode index. However, we have not defined explode on touch, and let's choose it as true. Let's also switch back to the view model, and instead of an integer value, I will like to change it to double, since we have a double value to keep it accurate. So let me scroll down, and instead of parsing the double to integer, let me keep it as double itself and restart the application. Notice that we now have the Doughnut selectable. The first index, which is health, is selected. Let me click on the other ones and the Doughnut explodes for the selected option. So we have the others, food, health and defense selected whenever we click on that particular Doughnut. Circular charts are pretty easy to create. I hope now you understand the pie and Doughnut charts in this session. In the next session, we will focus on radial charts. Till then, thank you for listening and have a great day.